Welcome to the Lore Lodge. Tonight we're descending into the world of The Legend of Zelda. Get comfortable, close your eyes, let your shoulders drop. The fire is warm, the story is waiting. Imagine you're standing in a vast field at dusk. The sky is bleeding orange and purple, and the wind carries the scent of grass and stone. Around you, the world hums with life, birds calling from distant trees, the soft rustle of leaves, the whisper of wind through ancient ruins half buried in the earth. But there's something else. A presence. Not threatening, but deeply present. Patient. Like the world itself is waiting for you to understand something important. You turn, and there he is. A young man in a green tunic, blonde hair catching the last light of the sun. He doesn't speak. He never does. His name is Link, and he has been walking through these worlds for over 40 years, across countless timelines and dimensions and reincarnations, and in all that time, he has never said a single word. Not one. Now, if you were to ask most people why Link is silent, they'd tell you it was a technical limitation. Back in 1986, when The Legend of Zelda first appeared on the Nintendo Entertainment System, voice acting wasn't part of the gaming experience. Cartridge space was measured in kilobytes. Memory was so precious that the designers had to choose between giving their hero a voice or giving the world around him depth and detail. They chose the world. They chose mystery. They chose silence. And that choice, made decades ago in a Japanese office, has become one of the most profound design decisions in the history of interactive entertainment. Because here's the thing about silence in a medium that demands your participation. When Link doesn't speak, you have to speak for him. His face is blank, so you imagine his emotions. His mouth doesn't move, so you hear his words in your own voice, in your own interior monologue. The game doesn't tell you what he's thinking. It creates a space where you can pour your own consciousness into his body. You don't watch Link's story. You become Link's story. Think about how rare that actually is. In almost every other narrative medium, film, television, books, even most video games, the protagonist is given a voice that belongs to someone else. An actor, a narrator, someone positioned between you and the character, filtering the experience through their interpretation. But in The Legend of Zelda, that filter is removed. The character becomes a mirror, and you, the player, become the voice that drives the narrative forward. Let's go back to the beginning. November 1986. The Nintendo Entertainment System has just launched in North America, and it's not clear whether home video gaming will survive. The Atari crash of 1983 had nearly destroyed the entire industry. Arcades still dominated. Home consoles were seen by many as a failed experiment. Nintendo had already released the NES in Japan the previous year with moderate success, but nobody knew if the American market, a market that had lost faith in video games entirely, would accept these machines again. Into this precarious moment, Nintendo released a game called The Legend of Zelda. It was developed under the direction of Shigeru Miyamoto, a designer who was barely in his 30s and had already created Donkey Kong. The game was a revelation. It wasn't a straight port of an arcade game. It wasn't a linear corridor of action sequences. It was a world, an entire world that you could explore, with secrets hidden in caves and under rocks and in the walls of dungeons. You could go almost anywhere you wanted. You could solve puzzles in multiple orders. You could get lost and find your own way out. It was not the way games worked at the time. And at the center of this world was a boy in green. A boy with no name at first. The manual called him Link, and only later did fans learn this was short for the link between worlds. A link between the player and the game. A literal connection. But he couldn't speak, not because of artistic vision initially, but because the cartridge simply didn't have room. The original Zelda was only 108 kilobytes of data. To put that in perspective, a single photograph taken on a modern smartphone is roughly 3,000 to 5,000 times larger. A brief text message uses more data than the entire code of the original Legend of Zelda. Every sprite, every sound effect, every line of dialogue, every pixel of every map had to fit into that impossibly small space. So they made a choice. They gave him music and movement instead of words. They gave him a sword and a shield instead of a monologue. They gave him a world to explore, and enemies to face, and dungeons to solve, and they left his interior life completely blank. And something extraordinary happened. Players didn't feel robbed, they felt invited. Within months, The Legend of Zelda had become a cultural phenomenon. It didn't save the video game industry. That's a narrative that gets oversimplified. But it did something perhaps more important. It proved that video games could be art, could be contemplative, could tell stories in ways that no other medium could tell them. And it did all of this through the absence of voice. The game became so popular that Nintendo released a sequel, Zelda. The Adventure of Link, in 1987. This game was darker, more linear, weirder. It featured towns and NPCs who had dialogue. You could talk to people. They would give you information. But your hero remained silent. And again, this silence didn't feel like a limitation. It felt like it belonged to the world. It felt intentional. But it wasn't until 1991, with the release of A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, that Link's silence began to evolve into something even more profound. A Link to the Past was, for many years, considered the perfect Zelda game. And it was made by the same core team as the original, expanded now with more time, more memory, more technological possibility. They could have given Link a voice. The Super Nintendo could have handled voice acting. They had the space. They had the technology. They didn't. Link remained silent, but the world around him grew infinitely richer. When you look at A Link to the Past now, even decades later, you notice something. There is more environmental storytelling in that single game than in entire franchises from other studios. You learn the history of the world from the dungeons you explore, the haunted forest where spirits dwell, the desert temple where the ancient desert people built monuments to their god, the castle of darkness at the world's end. Each location tells you something about the world's past, but you have to piece it together yourself. You have to read the environment. You have to imagine. And Link is always there, silent, experiencing it alongside you. Now let's jump forward. Let's skip past the early 1990s and into a time when voice acting became the norm. When CD-ROM technology meant that games could have hundreds of hours of spoken dialogue. When the original Zelda's 128 kilobytes became a rounding error in games that could contain multiple gigabytes of data. The technical limitation that had forced Link's silence had evaporated completely. Yet Link remained silent. By the time Ocarina of Time was released in 1998, nearly every major video game protagonist had a voice actor. Solid Snake from Metal Gear. Solid spoke. Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy V. I spoke. Even Mario, who had started as a speechless plumber, had voice acting in games like Super Mario 64. But when you put on the ocarina and become young Link in Hyrule Castle, when you meet Princess Zelda and she speaks to you, when you hear the score swell and the world opens up before you, Link doesn't say a word. He yells. He grunts when he's hit. He makes effort sounds when he jumps or swings his sword. But he doesn't speak language. And in a 64-bit world with unlimited cartridge space and sophisticated sound hardware, this choice became unmistakably intentional. It became design philosophy. The director of Ocarina of Time was Aonuma Eiji, and he would later become the producer of almost every major Zelda game for the next 2 decades. When asked about Link's silence, he didn't frame it as a limitation. He framed it as a gift. He said that by not giving Link a voice, they were leaving a space for the player to inhabit. the player becomes the voice of Link. The player's conscience becomes Link's conscience. When Link looks at Zelda with sadness, that sadness belongs to you. When he stands at the edge of a cliff, looking out over an impossible world, you're standing there too. This is where we need to pause and think about something deeper. Why is this actually important? Why does it matter that Link doesn't speak? Because in most narratives, most stories, most games, most films, there is a distance between you and the protagonist. You watch them, you observe them, you might feel for them, might care about their journey, but they are separate from you. They are other. They make decisions that are theirs, not yours. They speak with a voice that is not your voice. But in a Zelda game, that distance collapses. Not completely. You still control Link with a controller, still experience the world through a screen. But there's an intimacy there that's difficult to describe unless you've experienced it. When Link looks at something, you look at it. When he opens a chest, you feel the anticipation. When he solves a puzzle, you feel the satisfaction. Because you are not watching him do these things, you are doing them. And his silence is what makes that possible. Think about what would happen if Link spoke, if he narrated his thoughts. I'm going to explore this cave. This puzzle is difficult. I must save Princess Zelda. If he said these things, even in your head, they would be his words, not yours. They would filter your experience through his interpretation. But because he's silent, you fill in the silence yourself. Your thoughts become his thoughts. Your determination becomes his determination. Your heroism becomes his heroism. There's a famous game designer named Jonathan Blow who made a game called The Witness, a game about exploration and puzzle solving that has virtually no dialogue. He talks about something he calls the grammar of games. The idea that games have a unique language, a way of communicating that's distinct from words and images and sound. The grammar of games is action. What you do, how you move, what you interact with. And when you introduce dialogue, when you start spelling everything out, you're interfering with that grammar. You're translating the experience into language, which actually makes it less direct. Link's silence respects the grammar of games. It trusts the player to understand what's happening, what needs to be done, what the world is trying to tell them, not through exposition, but through environmental design, through the placement of a chest, through the sound of a chest opening, through the animation of Link reaching out and lifting his prize. These things communicate. They tell the story. And they do it better than any dialogue ever could, because you're not just receiving information, you're discovering it. Let's look at a specific example. The opening of Ocarina of Time. You wake up in a bedroom in Kokiri Forest. A fairy, a small, glowing creature called Navi, wakes you up. She's frantic, talking quickly, telling you that you have to go to the Great Deku Tree immediately because something is wrong. You hear the concern in her voice, but Link doesn't respond. You, as the player, stumble out of bed. You walk to the window. You look out at the forest. Navi is still talking, more urgently now. You could walk away from this. The game doesn't force you forward. But the combination of Navi's concerned voice, the music in the background, the visual design of the forest, it all creates a sense of urgency, of something being wrong. And you respond to that, not because Link was told to respond, but because you feel the urgency. You become curious. You want to know what's wrong. You move forward because you're invested, not because a character told you to be. That's the power of silence. Now, Link's silence has evolved over the decades. When he appears in games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, he does have more expressive animations. His face shows emotion more clearly. He reacts with body language to what's happening around him. In some ways, developers have started filling in the silence with visual communication. But he still doesn't speak words. He still doesn't explain himself. He still doesn't explain himself. He still doesn't explain himself. And it's remarkable how controversial this remains. Online, fans regularly debate whether Link should finally be given a voice. They argue that it would make the character more relatable, more human, more interesting. They argue that modern games like Breath of the Wild have already broken the mold by having Link react more expressively, so why not go all the way? But they're missing something. They're missing the entire point. Link doesn't need to be more relatable. You are Link. The question isn't whether Link is interesting. The question is whether you find the world interesting enough to want to explore it, to want to see what's around the next corner, to want to solve the mystery of what's happening and why. The silence forces you to engage with the world on its own terms, to listen to it rather than having it explained to you, to observe rather than being observed. There's a philosophical concept called the phenomenological subject, which is a very fancy way of saying the experience of being in a world. It's the idea that consciousness isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens through you. You don't passively receive sensations. You actively engage with the world through your senses, and that engagement creates your experience. It's why two people can look at the same painting and see completely different things. It's why two people can walk through the same forest and have completely different experiences. Link's silence is a direct invitation to phenomenological engagement. It's a design choice that says, this world exists, you are in it. What do you notice? What do you care about? What do you want to do? And because Link doesn't answer these questions for you, you have to find the answers yourself, which means you have to really look, really listen, really think. Let's think about what happens, psychologically, when you're playing a Zelda game. Specifically, let's think about the moment when you enter a new dungeon. The screen fades. You appear inside a stone structure. Torches line the walls, or maybe there's a strange light that has no source. You can hear something, distant sounds, echoing off stone, maybe the drip of water, maybe the skitter of something unknown. You move forward. Link steps carefully into the darkness. Now, if Link had a voice, what would he say? Probably something like, "This dungeon is dark and foreboding. I must be careful." But notice what that does. It takes the experience you're having, the actual visual stimulus, the audio, the tension of uncertainty, and it verbalizes it. It tells you what you're supposed to feel. It filters the raw sensory input through an interpretation. But Link doesn't say anything, so you stand in that darkness, and you're just standing in darkness. You feel the tension, you hear the ambient sounds, you wonder what's ahead, and the experience is yours, not Link's, yours. You are not following Link's emotional journey, you are having your own. This is a subtle distinction, but it's absolutely fundamental to why Zelda games work the way they do. And it explains why, in a world where games have unlimited budget for voice acting, where players have been voice-acted characters since the 1990s, where even small indie games can have professional voice actors, Link remains silent. Because his silence is not an absence, it's a presence. It's the presence of the player. Now, we should talk about the larger lore implications of this silence. Because in the world of Hyrule itself, Link's silence means something different. Different characters throughout the games have noticed that Link doesn't speak. In some games, it's acknowledged directly. In others, it's implied through how people react to him. They listen to what he has to say, even though he hasn't said anything. They know what he means, even though he hasn't spoken. It's a strange kind of communication that exists in the world of Hyrule itself. In some interpretations of the lore, Link is said to be cursed or blessed with silence as part of his role as the hero, that his inability to speak is bound up with his supernatural destiny, that he is, in a sense, tied to the world in a way that transcends normal human communication. His silence becomes part of the mythology of Hyrule. It becomes part of what makes him the hero, rather than a limitation on his character. There's also something interesting about how this silence affects the mythology of the Zelda series as a whole, because if you think about the structure of the Zelda mythology, it's built on cycles. The goddess Hylia created the world. The hero is reincarnated across timelines. Ganon is eternally defeated and eternally returns. The princess is always imprisoned or in peril or waiting to be rescued. These aren't unique stories. They're patterns that repeat. They're cycles that continue. And what better way to represent a cycle than through a character who doesn't accumulate dialogue or personality across games? Each incarnation of Link is separate. Each has his own context, his own world. But they're all connected by silence, by the absence of a singular, consistent voice that would tie them together. The silence allows each Link to be his own person, his own hero in his own time, while still being part of a larger pattern. Think about this carefully. If Link spoke, if each incarnation of Link had a voice actor, then there would be a voice continuity across timelines, or there would have to be a different actor for each version, which would highlight how different they are. But because Link is silent in all games, he is universally the same and universally different. He is both the link to you, the player, and the link between all the different stories of Hyrule's history. This brings us to something else entirely, the phenomenon of player-created narratives in Zelda games. Because when a character doesn't speak, when a character is essentially a blank slate, the player naturally fills in that space with their own interpretation. People who play Zelda games develop their own understanding of who Link is. Some people imagine him as a cheerful, eager hero. Others imagine him as a serious, determined warrior. Others imagine him as a serious, determined warrior. Others imagine him as someone reluctant and thoughtful. And all of these interpretations are valid. Because Link, in his silence, contains multitudes. He can be anyone. He is everyone who plays him. Fans have written thousands of stories about Link. They've created art depicting him in different ways. They've theorized about his personality, his motivations, his fears and hopes. And every single one of these interpretations is built on the foundation of his silence. If Link had a canonical voice and personality, if we knew exactly how he spoke and what he thought, then all of these fan creations would be trying to correct or reinterpret an already established character. But because he's silent, they're not interpreting, they're creating. There's a term in literary criticism called reader response theory, which is the idea that the meaning of a text isn't fixed in the text itself, but is created in the interaction between the text and the reader. Different readers will find different meanings, and the text that leaves the most space for interpretation is often the text that speaks the most profoundly to the most people. Link's silence is the ultimate expression of reader response theory in game design. The game provides the world, the challenges, the setting, and the music. But the character, the protagonist, the hero, the person you're being, is incomplete until the player fills them in. You don't just play a Zelda game. You complete a Zelda game. You finish Link by being Link. And that is something utterly unique. That is something that no voice actor, no matter how talented, could ever achieve. Because the moment you give Link a voice, the moment you give him specific dialogue and a specific way of speaking, you close that space. You answer the question. You complete the character. And in doing so, you exclude every interpretation that doesn't match that voice. So it makes perfect sense that, even in 2024, even in a world where voice acting is expected in almost every narrative game, Link remains silent. Because that silence is not a bug. It's not a limitation that remains due to tradition or stubbornness. It's the core of what makes Link who he is. It's the design choice that separates Zelda from every other game series. When you think about the legacy of The Legend of Zelda, when you think about why it's remained so beloved across 4 decades and countless platforms and reincarnations, a lot of people point to the dungeons, the clever puzzle design, the exploration, the world building, the music. All of those things matter. All of them are part of why Zelda games are special. But underneath all of that, the thing that holds it together, the thing that makes it possible for you to become as invested in these games as you are, is the silence of your hero. It's the absence of voice that creates the presence of self. It's the empty space that contains everything you bring to it, So tonight, when you close your eyes and imagine yourself standing in Hyrule, standing in Termina, standing in whatever land Link is exploring, remember that you're not watching a story. You're not following a character. You're not receiving a narrative that's been filtered through someone else's interpretation. You're being the story. You're being the character. You're creating the narrative. And that is the true magic of silence. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're standing in a vast chamber, one so enormous that your voice would echo if you dared to speak. The air around you feels charged, almost sacred. Before you, impossibly high above the stone floor, 3 golden triangles hang suspended in the darkness. They gleam with an inner light that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Each one pulses with a rhythm like a heartbeat, but not your heartbeat. Something older. Something that was already ancient when the first civilization to worship these objects was born. You are looking at the Triforce. Or rather, you are looking at what the Triforce represents across all of Hyrule's history. And if you want to understand why the Kingdom of Hyrule has been cursed to repeat the same struggles across centuries, across timelines themselves, you need to understand what these 3 objects actually are, what they mean, and why their division has made the history of Hyrule not a story of progress, but a story of progress, but a story of eternal return. Let us begin with a question that sounds simple, but becomes impossibly complex the moment you ask it. What is the Triforce? Most people would tell you it is 3 magical objects, 3 pieces of an ancient artifact left behind by the golden goddesses themselves. Din, Furore, and Nayru created the world, shaped it, brought forth life and law and change. And when they were finished, when Hyrule was complete and breathing and alive, they left behind a mark of their power. 3 triangles. 3 pieces of divine were made manifest. But that answer is shallow, isn't it? It explains what the Triforce is physically, but not what it means. And in the mythology of Zelda, meaning is everything. Imagine you are a scholar in ancient Hyrule, living perhaps thousands of years before the events of Ocarina of Time. You have inherited texts that your teachers told you were among the oldest in existence. Prophecies. Records of a time before memory. And in those texts you read that the 3 goddesses did not simply vanish after creating the world. They left instructions. They left conditions. They left conditions. They left conditions. They left conditions. The Triforce, you learn, is divided into 3 parts. The Triforce of power, the Triforce of wisdom, the Triforce of courage. And the teachings make clear that these are not equal strengths. They are not simply 3 versions of the same thing. They are 3 different expressions of what it means to shape the world. Power is the ability to enforce your will. It is dominion. It is the strength to take what you desire and remake it in your image. If you could hold the Triforce of power, you could command nations. You could bend the very laws of nature. You could live forever. You could never die, never fade, never be forgotten. The Triforce of power is the dream of every tyrant who ever lived. It is conquest. It is conquest. It is immortality through force. Wisdom, by contrast, is understanding. It is knowing the nature of things. It is seeing patterns where others see only chaos. If you possessed the Triforce of wisdom, you would not need to force the world to bend to your will. You would already understand how it works. You would know the right path, the true solution, the way forward that brings harmony rather than destruction. The Triforce of wisdom is what the wisest rulers hope they possess. It is the comfort of knowing that you are choosing correctly. And courage? Courage is the willingness to act despite knowing the cost. It is standing against the tide. It is making the difficult choice not because it is easy or popular, but because it is right. The Triforce of courage belongs to those who would sacrifice everything, including themselves, for something greater than their own comfort or survival. Now, here is where the mythology becomes truly haunting. According to the oldest texts, these three forces should exist in balance. A kingdom ruled by someone possessing all three would be perfect, complete, in harmony. But the goddesses did not leave all three in one place. They hid them. They separated them. And the texts explain why. They wanted Hyrule to choose, not once, but over and over again, across generations, across timelines, across the turning of ages. They wanted the kingdom to face trials. They wanted humanity to develop all three aspects of character, rather than simply inheriting power. And so they created a condition: the Triforce would only come whole to someone who possessed all three qualities equally. Anyone else who touched it would find it split, fragmented, with one piece escaping to another person entirely. Listen to that again. Read those words slowly, because they change everything about how you understand Hyrule's history. The Triforce is not a prize waiting to be won. It is a mirror. It reflects the character of whoever seeks to claim it. If a tyrant touches it seeking only power, they will receive only the Triforce of power, and the other two will scatter. If a scholar touches it seeking wisdom above all else, they will find their hands full with wisdom, but power and courage will slip away like water through their fingers. The Triforce is not a blessing, it is a judgment. And this is why Hyrule's history is the history it is. Consider the first great empire, the kingdom that the texts speak of, the one that rose to glory and seemed to touch the very heavens with its reach. It was ruled by people who possessed great wisdom and great power. They built cities of impossible beauty. They created wonders of magic and engineering. They preserved knowledge and light in a way that no civilization since has managed. But here is the terrible part. They did not possess courage. When the darkness came, they were not willing to sacrifice what they had built to defend it. They did not have the courage to fight a losing battle. They did not have the courage to let their civilization fall if that was the price of saving their people. And so, faced with an enemy that required not just wisdom and power, but also sacrifice, they fell. The empire crumbled. The wonders were buried. The knowledge was lost. Generations later, a new kingdom would rise. Different rulers. Different times. But the same story. These kings and queens possessed power. They possessed wisdom. But when the test came, when they faced a crisis that required true courage, they found that virtue had not been passed down through bloodlines. It cannot be. Courage, true courage, must be chosen by each generation anew. It cannot be inherited. And so they too fell. This pattern repeats, and repeats, and repeats. You are watching the rise and fall of kingdoms, not because of destiny, but because of a fundamental truth about how power works. Any person or society that seeks to hold all the power without cultivating courage will eventually face something they cannot overcome through power alone. Any kingdom built on wisdom but lacking courage will crumble when wisdom must be abandoned for the greater good. And any hero who possesses courage but not wisdom will achieve nothing but chaos. The Triforce is divided because division is necessary. Now imagine yourself as a different sort of person. You are not a scholar. You are a soldier. You live in the Hyrule of Ocarina of Time, in the era after the kingdom has already begun its slow decline. You have heard the legends, of course. Everyone has. The stories of the golden goddesses and the Triforce. But to you, it is distant history, mythology. What matters to you is that the kingdom is weakening. What matters is that strange magic has begun to seep across the borders. What matters is that people are afraid, and when people are afraid, order begins to crumble from the inside. You do not know, cannot know, that you are living in a moment of cosmic significance. You do not understand that you are about to witness the largest test Hyrule has faced since its founding. That a boy who cannot speak, who has been raised away from civilization, who knows nothing of his destiny, is about to be pushed into a series of trials that will determine not just the fate of your kingdom, but the fate of multiple timelines, multiple worlds, multiple possibilities of what Hyrule could become. You are just a soldier, just a person trying to protect your home. But you are part of the pattern. You are part of the cycle. Let us step back and examine the mythology more carefully, because there is something deeply strange about how the Triforce works. Whenever it is touched by someone who does not possess all three virtues in equal measure, it grants them the single piece that matches their greatest strength. It is not random. It is not arbitrary. It is a cosmic law as fundamental as gravity. The Triforce of power goes to those who seek dominion most desperately. Think of Ganondorf. Before he ever becomes the beast, before he transforms into the Demon King, he is a man who wanted power above all else. He wanted to rule. He wanted to conquer. He wanted to reshape the world according to his vision. And when he reached for the Triforce, it gave him exactly that. It gave him the Triforce of power. But it also left him incomplete. He became the most powerful being in Hyrule. He could command monsters. He could reshape the very land. He could spread darkness across the kingdom and transform it into a nightmare realm. And yet, with all that power, he failed. Again and again. Why? Because power without wisdom makes terrible choices. Power without courage means that when faced with a threat to that power itself, the wielder will do anything to preserve it, becoming increasingly desperate, increasingly inhuman, increasingly lost. The Triforce of Wisdom has its own curse. It goes to those who value understanding above all else. Zelda herself carries this burden. She is wise. She understands the prophecies. She comprehends the patterns of history. She sees danger before others do. And the Triforce of Wisdom flows through her, granting her those insights, those visions, that clear sight of what is coming. But wisdom without power is helpless. It can see the danger. It cannot always prevent it. And wisdom without courage means that sometimes the wisest choice is the safest choice, which is not always the right choice. Zelda experiences this torment throughout her life. She knows what must be done. She cannot always do it herself. She must trust others. She must hope that they will have the courage and power to act on the wisdom she provides. It is a lonely burden. And then there is courage. The Triforce of courage goes to those who would act without guarantee of success, to those who would face the unknown, to those who would stand against the darkness even knowing they might fall. Link carries this piece. Or rather, Link embodies this virtue so completely that the Triforce of courage is drawn to him like a compass needle drawn to north. He is not the strongest, he is not the wisest, but he is willing. He is brave enough to face what others cannot. He is courageous enough to keep moving forward even when he has no reason to believe he will succeed. But courage without wisdom becomes recklessness. It charges forward blindly. Courage without power struggles to overcome genuine obstacles. A courageous heart in a weak body still faces defeat. Link survives not because he is invincible, but because others grant him the wisdom and power he needs. Zelda's guidance, the weapons and tools he finds, the allies who stand with him. Courage alone is not enough, but it is necessary. It is the spark that ignites change. This is the genius of the Triforce's design. It is not a flaw that it is divided, it is the point. The entire structure of Hyrule's mythology rests on this truth. No single person should have all the power. No single perspective should dominate. The kingdom survives and grows only when power, wisdom, and courage work together, each checking the others, each balancing the others. When one becomes dominant, the kingdom suffers. When all three are absent, Hyrule falls into darkness. Consider the timeline after Ganondorf's defeat. Assume he is truly gone. The Triforce of power is no longer held by anyone. It waits in the sacred realm, unreachable. Hyrule should be able to rebuild, should be able to create a new kind of kingdom. But the text suggests that even this is not enough. Hyrule's history, across multiple timelines, shows that old patterns repeat. New tyrants arise, not because they necessarily touch the Triforce of power, but because the hunger for absolute power is part of human nature. Without the constant pressure of trials, without the constant need to cultivate all three virtues, kingdoms tend toward corruption. Power concentrates, wisdom becomes rare, courage becomes reckless or absent entirely. And so, on some fundamental level, the Triforce remains necessary. The tests remain necessary. The cycle must continue. Imagine yourself now as a philosopher in one of Hyrule's later ages. You have inherited all the texts. You understand the mythology completely. And you are sitting in your study, looking at a map of Hyrule, trying to trace the pattern across centuries, trying to understand if there is any way to break the cycle. You note that the three kingdoms in one timeline are separated not just by geography, but by the very virtues of the Triforce. One kingdom values power above all else and becomes a military state. Another values wisdom and becomes a place of learning and magic. A third, the smallest and humblest, becomes a place where courage is cultivated because survival demands it. You wonder, is this accidental? Or is this by design? Did the goddesses structure the world so that these three types of civilization would naturally emerge? Did they engineer reality itself so that the Triforce's division would be mirrored in the division of peoples, of kingdoms, of philosophies? You will never know the answer, but the question haunts you. Because if it is true, then Hyrule's history is not a tragedy. It is a lesson. A curriculum taught over centuries by the goddesses themselves, each repetition adding new understanding, each cycle bringing humanity closer to a state where all three virtues might finally exist in balance, not in a single person, but in a civilization as a whole. Let us return to the practical questions. What does it mean, in game terms, that the Triforce is divided? It means that every major conflict in Hyrule's history is not simply good versus evil. It is incomplete versus incomplete. It is strength against weakness. It is a kingdom or a hero who possess one or two virtues facing challenges that require all three. When Ganondorf holds the Triforce of power and begins his conquest, he faces opposition from those who possess wisdom and courage. But they are not unified. The wise often disagree with the brave. Those who understand the situation often counsel caution, while those with courage counsel action. This internal conflict, this friction between the virtues, is what gives Ganondorf his opening. He succeeds not because power is greater than wisdom and courage, but because his power is focused, while wisdom and courage are scattered among many people, many perspectives, many disagreements. This is why the birth of a hero who possesses all three virtues is so significant. When Link arrives, truly arrives, not as a boy stumbling through fate, but as a complete hero possessing power, wisdom, and courage, something shifts. For a moment, the kingdom is given a glimpse of what balance looks like. But, and here is the haunting part of the mythology, Link cannot remain. He cannot stay and rule. He cannot become the king who would enshrine all three virtues into law. He is, by his nature, a wanderer. The hero who possesses all three virtues is not meant to hold them. He is meant to use them in a moment of crisis and then release them, allowing them to scatter once more into the world, distributed among many people, many kingdoms, many generations. Why? Perhaps because if one person could hold all three virtues, all three Triforces, they might decide not to release them. They might decide to build a kingdom based on their own balance, their own understanding, their own courage. And that kingdom might last for a time. But it would be built on that one person's choices, not on the development of all people across all generations. The Triforce requires that each generation choose their path anew. Requires that power be earned, not simply inherited. Requires that wisdom be discovered, not simply taught. Requires that courage be developed through trial and struggle, not given as a gift. This is the true curse of Hyrule. It is not that evil always returns. It is that goodness, true goodness, must always be chosen anew. Now, there is another layer to this mythology that is worth examining. The Triforce is not simply three separate objects. The texts speak of it as one thing, divided. And there is a profound difference between those two ideas. If the Triforce were three separate objects, they would have no relationship to each other. Power could exist completely independent of wisdom. Courage could exist completely separate from power. They would be three unrelated forces that happen to be equally important. But the texts describe the Triforce as one object, made three, which means that each part is inherently related to the others. They are not just balanced against each other, they are integrated. They are interconnected. They form a whole even when they are separated. This suggests something profound about the nature of reality in Hyrule. That power, wisdom, and courage are not three different things. They are three expressions of the same fundamental force, the same divine will, the same creative impulse that shaped the world. When Ganondorf holds the Triforce of power, he is not holding something completely separate from wisdom and courage. He is holding power twisted into a shape that wisdom and courage do not recognize. It is like looking at a familiar object in a distorted mirror. The power is real, but it is drained of the wisdom that would make it constructive. It is separated from the courage that would make it noble. And so his power becomes destructive, not because power itself is evil, but because power alone, separated from the other two virtues, becomes corrupting. Think about how this applies to real-world philosophy. History is full of people who held great power. Some of them were tyrants. Some of them were wise rulers. What was the difference? Almost always, it was that the wise rulers also possessed wisdom about how to use their power. They understood consequences. They could see further ahead than the immediate gratification of their desires. The tyrants were not necessarily less intelligent than the wise rulers. They were often quite clever, but they lacked something. They lacked wisdom about anything except how to maintain their power. And they lacked courage in the form of willingness to question their own choices, willingness to admit error, willingness to sacrifice power if that was what righteousness demanded. Hyrule's mythology suggests that these are not separate virtues that might or might not exist in a person. They are interconnected. You cannot truly possess power without wisdom. You cannot truly possess wisdom without courage. They exist together, or they corrupt into something hollow. Consider how this shapes the conflicts throughout the timeline. Every major villain in the legend holds one piece of the Triforce, or is driven by desire for it. Ganondorf with power, Vati with power, transformed by hatred and ambition. The demon beast Calamity with the desire for power. Each one believes that what they need is more power, more dominion, more control. And in each case, they are defeated not by someone with more power, but by someone who brings wisdom and courage to counter that power. Link and Zelda together form a balance. The hero cannot defeat the tyrant through force alone. The princess cannot defeat the tyrant through wisdom alone. But together, bringing courage and wisdom against power, they can create a new equilibrium. This is why the prophecies speak of a hero in green, why they speak of a princess bearing wisdom, why they speak of cycles and returns. Because these two figures, together, are the kingdom's immune system. When the balance tips too far toward power, they emerge to restore equilibrium. But they never destroy the power. They never eliminate the capacity for ambition or conquest. They simply contain it. They remind the world that power is not the only force that shapes history, and then, having done their work, they fade, and the cycle continues. There is something deeply melancholic about this. Imagine living in Hyrule, really living there. Not as a player looking at the mythology from outside, but as a person actually existing in this world. You would know, or at least you would suspect, that peace is temporary, that the cycle will return, that your children or your grandchildren will face the same trials your ancestors faced. You would have no hope of permanent progress, no possibility of a final victory that stays final. The best you could hope for is to maintain the balance, to pass on the wisdom, to cultivate the courage that the next generation would need. This is not pessimistic, though. It is realistic. And there is a kind of peace in accepting a cycle you cannot escape. You do what you can in your time. You live your virtue. You face your trials with grace. And you trust that others, in other times, will do the same. The Triforce, finally, is not a prize. It is a burden shared equally among all people who care about their world. The burden of holding power wisely. The burden of pursuing wisdom with humility. The burden of developing courage in the face of fear. No single person can hold this burden completely. No single generation can resolve it finally. But if each person takes their portion, if each generation passes the understanding forward, then the kingdom survives. And that is the true power of the Triforce. Not dominion, not omniscience, not fearlessness, but the power to create a world where all three virtues matter, where power must answer to wisdom, where wisdom must be brave enough to act, where courage must be informed by understanding, where the cycle continues not as punishment, but as promise. Close your eyes. Settle into the quiet. Imagine you're standing in a place that shouldn't exist. You're in a library, not a real one, a space between spaces. The shelves stretch upward into a darkness that your eyes cannot quite follow. Each book on these shelves is a timeline, a complete history. A world that was, that is, and that might yet be. The air around you is cool, still. Like the moment before, something shatters. For most of its history, The Legend of Zelda existed in the minds of players as a simple thing, a straightforward thread. Each game was its own story, or perhaps a loose sequel to the one before it. Link would wake, or reincarnate, or simply appear. The kingdom would face darkness. He would triumph. The cycle would continue. It was comfortable, linear, easy to understand, like a river flowing in one direction, always toward the same ocean. But something extraordinary happened. Around the year 2011, that comfortable linearity shattered into something far more complex and fascinating. The series had been growing for nearly 3 decades at that point. Games had piled upon games. Sequels had followed prequels. Stories had begun to contradict one another in the smallest, most subtle ways. Chronologies had become tangled. And then Skyward Sword arrived. It was announced as the beginning of everything. The origin. The moment before the cycle truly started. It promised to explain the Triforce, the eternal conflict between hero and darkness, the reason why the same story repeated across countless ages of the world. Fans began to wonder, if Skyward Sword was the beginning, how did all the other games fit around it? What was the architecture of Zelda's entire mythological structure? 3 years later, Nintendo released the Hyrulean Historia. It was a book, a beautiful book, heavy in your hands, filled with art and history and maps. And inside that book, on a single page, was a diagram, a timeline, a flowchart. And that flowchart showed something that would transform how millions of people understood The Legend of Zelda forever. The timeline split in 3 directions. Imagine standing at a fork in a road. You know how that feels. You're walking forward, and the path before you simply diverges. You can take the left way, or the right way, or the middle path. But you cannot take all 3 simultaneously. You have to choose. And in choosing, you lose the possibility of what would have happened had you chosen differently. Now imagine that Nintendo was telling players something far stranger, that they had never been choosing. That every path had been walked, that there wasn't one Hyrule, one timeline, one true history of the kingdom. There were 3 complete, separate, fully realized histories. 3 Hyrules that had developed along entirely different paths, shaped by one single moment of divergence in Ocarina of Time. That moment was the end of Ocarina of Time, or rather, what came after it. In that game, you defeat Ganon. You return to your childhood and your life continues. But Nintendo revealed that there was another possibility. What if you had failed? What if, in that final confrontation, Ganon had defeated the hero of time? What if you had never been sent back to your childhood at all, but had remained as an adult in a world conquered by darkness? Think about how unusual this was. Most franchises don't invite players to imagine their failure. Most games don't suggest that the non-canonical ending, the game over screen, the path not taken, was just as real and important as victory. But Zelda did. And in doing so, it created something that philosophers and storytellers have been grappling with for thousands of years, a branching narrative of time itself. The concept isn't new, of course. If you've ever read Jorge Luis Borges's The Garden of Forking Paths, you've encountered a fictional exploration of exactly this idea. A story within a story, where all possibilities exist simultaneously. Or if you've dabbled in theoretical physics, you've heard it described as the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. The notion that every quantum event creates a branching universe where both outcomes occurred in separate timelines. But this was perhaps the first time a video game franchise had committed entirely to this structure. And it did so not as a gimmick, but as a revelation. An explanation for why the series had always felt both connected and separate, familiar and alien. Let me take you into the first timeline, the one that's split to the left. You're standing at the moment of decision in the Chamber of the Sages. It's the climax of Ocarina of Time, a game released in 1998 that virtually defined what three-dimensional adventure games could be. Ganondorf stands before you, the King of Darkness, a being of pure malice who has conquered the kingdom and plunged the world into eternal darkness. You have fought through his castle, solved puzzles, defeated his servants. You are the hero of time. And you fail. In this timeline, you fail. Ganondorf defeats you. The sage's seal is not placed upon the sacred realm. The hero never returns to his childhood. Instead, you remain frozen in this moment, defeated, while Ganondorf rules the world unopposed for 7 years, then 100, then 1,000, then 10,000 years. This is the Dark World timeline. Or rather, it becomes one. Because centuries after your defeat, something extraordinary happens. The land itself rebels against Ganondorf's rule. A new hero rises. Not the same hero of time, but a different reincarnation in an age when your legend has faded to myth. This hero shatters Ganondorf's dominion, but they cannot fully defeat him. Instead, they seal him away. Trap him. But imperfectly. The result is a world forever fragmented. The sacred realm becomes twisted, darkened, inverted. The land splits into the world you know and a twisted mirror of it. A dark version where the laws of physics and morality are inverted. Light becomes shadow. Good becomes corruption. And the hero must travel between these worlds using a magical artifact, seeking to heal the wounds that an ancient defeat created. You know this world. You've walked through it if you've ever played A Link to the Past, that legendary game released in 1991 on the Super Nintendo. Though the timeline book wouldn't reveal it until 2011, A Link to the Past takes place in the world that resulted from the hero of time's failure. It's a world that learned to live with brokenness, to accept that some wounds cannot be fully healed, only managed. Now imagine the middle path, a different divergence. One where the hero of time succeeded, defeated Ganon, but was never sent back to his childhood. Instead, he remained in the adult timeline. He grew old. He eventually died. But before he did, he established a lineage, a dynasty of heroes. His descendants would face darkness in their own ages, continuing the eternal struggle in an unbroken line stretching forward through time. This is the adult timeline, the one where history simply continues forward from the victory in Ocarina of Time. Hundreds of years pass. Kingdoms rise and fall. The Triforce's power remains a constant force, shaping history from behind a veil. Heroes emerge in each generation, and some of them wear the green tunic. Some of them are reincarnations of that first hero. Some are simply courageous people who happen to be born into the right moment. In this timeline, something strange happens. The sea rises. The world is gradually submerged under an endless ocean. No one knows why. Perhaps it's a natural disaster. Perhaps it's divine punishment. Perhaps it's something in between. The Triforce, mysterious as always, seems to play a role, but its intentions remain inscrutable. What emerges from the drowning is a world of islands, a maritime civilization scattered across the waves. And in one of these ages, a new hero sails the ocean on his own vessel, collecting power, saving islands from monsters, searching for the girl who was stolen away from him. This is the hero of The Wind Waker, a game released in 2002 that shocked players with its cel-shaded art style and its unexpected setting. For years, fans debated whether it was even a real Zelda game, whether it belonged to the same universe as Ocarina of Time at all. But Nintendo revealed the truth. Yes, it belonged. It was simply so far in the future that the world had been transformed beyond recognition. The inland kingdoms had vanished beneath the waves. A new civilization had developed. And the eternal hero had adapted to his eternal role, learning to sail instead of to journey on foot. And then there is the third path, the one where the hero of time succeeded, was sent back to his childhood, and grew up knowing that darkness would come, knowing that he had already lived a future where the world fell to shadow, knowing too much, carrying too much. This timeline is perhaps the most mysterious and strange. Because what happens when a child who has already lived as an adult begins to grow up again? How does society respond to a hero with knowledge that surpasses his years? What does it mean to prevent a catastrophe when you already know exactly what form that catastrophe took? In this timeline, something seems to go wrong. The normal cycle is disrupted. Instead of a clear line of succession, instead of clear victories and defeats, the history becomes fragmented and difficult to trace. The timeline splits further into smaller branches. An era of decline. Wars that shouldn't have happened. Darkness that should have been prevented but came anyway. This is the downfall timeline. The place where the hero of time's knowledge of the future somehow made things worse instead of better. Where the Triforce's interventions became more chaotic and unpredictable. Where reincarnations of the hero appeared not in cycles of light and darkness, but in a long, slow descent. Where the very concepts of victory and defeat became muddied and uncertain. This is the timeline containing the original Legend of Zelda, released in 1986, the first game, the one that started it all, and it's positioned, according to the official timeline, as a moment of failure, a culmination of decline. The hero defeats Ganon, but the world has already been diminished by centuries of strife. Now, here's something to sit with in the darkness. None of these timelines is the true. 1. None of them is more real or more canonical than the others. They are three equal expressions of Hyrule's history. Three equally valid worlds, all created by the consequences of a single moment of choice, a single instant where victory and defeat diverged. It's a profoundly strange thing to do with a video game franchise. Most stories are told as a linear progression. A happened, then B happened, then C. Cause and effect in a single, unbroken chain. But Zelda isn't that anymore. Zelda is a multiverse, a set of parallel histories, an exploration of the philosophical question if the same person, in the same place, with the same goal, can end up in radically different worlds based on a single moment of difference. What does that say about the nature of reality? Philosophers have written entire books about this idea. The notion of possible worlds. The concept that every decision, no matter how small, creates a fork in reality. That somewhere, in some other branch of existence, you made the choice you didn't make. You went left instead of right. You spoke instead of stayed silent. You won instead of lost. And that version of you is just as real as this one, living out the consequences of that different decision in a world that mirrors this one, but diverges in crucial ways. For centuries, this was pure philosophy, pure metaphysics, unverifiable, untestable. But in the 20th century, physicists began to suggest that it might not be metaphorical at all, that quantum mechanics might actually work exactly this way, that the universe might literally split every time a quantum event occurs, creating infinite parallel universes, each one containing a different outcome of the same event. Zelda's timeline wasn't scientifically rigorous, of course, but it was spiritually aligned with this idea in a way that resonated deeply with players. It said, your choices matter, but they don't matter by erasing other choices. They matter by creating worlds. Your victory and someone else's failure are not opposites. They are two branches of the same tree, both real, both valid, both worthy of exploration. Consider what this meant for the structure of the entire series. Suddenly, every game that had seemed disconnected now had a place. A home. Skyward Sword, the origin. Ocarina of Time, the point of divergence. And then 3 families of games, each one extending from that moment in different directions, each one exploring a different possibility space. To the left, the Dark World timeline contained A Link to the Past and the original Legend of Zelda, a slow descent into darkness and fragmentation. To the right, the adult timeline contained The Wind Waker and, centuries later, the Phantom Zelda games, Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, a world transformed by catastrophe, but still capable of growth and wonder. And in the center, the Downfall timeline contained, well, it contained less. It was the sparsest of the 3 branches. But it was there. It was real. It was history. Listen to the weight of this idea for a moment, not as a video game concept, but as a metaphor for how we understand history itself. When you read about the past, you read it as a single chain of events. Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC. As a result, the Roman Republic collapsed, and the empire rose in its place. Cause and effect. Simple. Traceable. But historians and philosophers have long understood that this is somewhat false. There were other possibilities. If Caesar had died in the Alexandrian campaign, if he had chosen not to return to Rome, if the assassins had failed in their plot, each of those different outcomes would have led to radically different worlds. Not better or worse necessarily, just different. Rome might have remained a republic. It might have become an even worse tyranny. It might have fractured into city-states. We can never know. We only know what happened. And in knowing what happened, we implicitly ignore all the infinite ways it could have happened differently. Zelda doesn't ignore those paths. Instead, it honors them. It says, the hero of time's failure is not an erased possibility. It's a real timeline. It shaped a world. It has consequences that ripple down through ages. That defeated hero, in that defeated world, led to a chain of events that eventually produced new heroes, new kingdoms, new stories. There's something profoundly comforting about that idea when you sit with it long enough. Because it means that failure isn't final. It means that defeat can be the seed of future growth. It means that the world you make, the reality you create through your choices, through your victories and your failures, through your triumphs and your defeats, matters eternally. Even in the branches where you lose, the consequences of your loss continue to propagate outward, creating new generations, new possibilities, new chances for light to emerge from darkness. Now imagine standing in that library again, the one at the beginning, the library between worlds. You're looking at the 3 timelines, not as lines, but as books. 3 books, each one complete, each one thousands of years of history, each one the equal truth. A scholar might enter this library and read one book, learn one history, leave believing they understood Hyrule completely. But a true seeker would come back, again and again, reading each history, letting them inform each other, understanding that reality is not singular but multiplicitous. That the kingdom you see depends on which timeline you're standing in. This is what Nintendo was saying to players, not just, look, here's a cool timeline explanation that makes the games fit together, but something deeper. Reality is branching. History is multifaceted. The same events, slightly altered, lead to profoundly different worlds, and all of those worlds are real. All of them matter. Years after the timeline was revealed, Nintendo continued adding games to it. Some fit neatly into the branches. Others required new splits, new complications. The timeline wasn't a tidy diagram anymore. It was becoming a complex web, a branching tree with sub-branches and offshoots. Some fans complained about this. They felt that the timeline was becoming too intricate, too contrived. They preferred the earlier comfort of believing that the games weren't connected at all, that each one was its own isolated story. In a way, they were right to feel nostalgic for that simplicity. The timeline adds a layer of meaning, but it also adds complexity. It demands more from the player. It asks you to think of Hyrule not as a single kingdom in a single time, but as an eternal concept, an idea that keeps being reborn across multiple worlds and ages. But consider what else the timeline does. It creates connection. It means that when you play Ocarina of Time, you're not just playing a single game. You're setting off a cascade of consequences. The victory you achieve will lead directly to the submerged archipelago of the Wind Waker. The failure you can imagine will lead to the twisted, fractured world of A Link to the Past. The knowledge you carry forward will lead to the twilight struggles of Twilight Princess. Every action has infinite ripples, extending forward through time, creating new realities. It's a way of saying, you matter. Not just in this moment, but eternally. Your choices don't just affect the immediate future. They shape entire ages. They create worlds. Most video games don't do this. Most games position the player as the protagonist of a closed narrative. You win, you lose, the story ends, the game is over. Even games with morality systems that branch gameplay into different paths operate within a single timeline. You chose to be good, so you get the good ending. You chose to be evil, so you get the evil ending. But Zelda's timeline doesn't work that way. It doesn't position one branch as correct and the others as wrong. It positions all of them as equally real. Skyward Sword, the origin point, doesn't contain moral choices. It's not a game about deciding whether the hero should be good or evil. It's simply the beginning, the first moment. And everything that flows from it flows with equal weight and consequence. This is where the timeline concept transcends being a mere organizational tool and becomes something approaching philosophy. It becomes a statement about the nature of meaning itself. If all timelines are equally real, then the meaning of any single timeline doesn't come from it being correct or superior. The meaning comes from it being chosen, explored, experienced. The meaning comes from what you do in the world you've been given. A player in the Wind Waker's timeline, sailing across the flooded oceans, isn't lesser than a player in the adult timeline's normal world. They're not playing a wrong version of Zelda. They're exploring a valid expression of what the kingdom could be. They're seeing what happens when the Triforce chooses this particular history over that one. As you drift deeper into sleep, let this image settle in your mind. 3 branches, 3 histories, 3 Hyrules, all equally real, all equally shaped by a single moment of choice. Imagine you could walk between them, opening doors that led from one timeline to another. You could see the hero's triumph in one world, then step through a doorway and see the consequences of that triumph rippling forward 10,000 years. Then step through again and see a different world entirely, where the hero failed, but where failure eventually gave rise to its own form of beauty. That's what the timeline is. A map of possibility. A statement that reality is not singular, but prismatic. that history isn't one story told in one way, but infinite stories told in parallel, all connected, all meaningful, all worth understanding. The library you're standing in shifts slightly. The shelves seem to glow with the soft light now. Not brightness, just warmth. Each book is a world, each world is a story, and all of them are true at once. Close your eyes. The timeline spreads out before you, invisible but present. All of Hyrule's ages, all of its kingdoms, all of its heroes, winning and losing in equal measure, all of them real. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Imagine you are standing alone in a workshop. Not a building really, more a space between worlds. The air is cool and smells of stone dust and metal that has been worked for centuries, perhaps longer than that. Around you, shadows dance on ancient wooden beams. There is no sound except the soft rustle of your own breath. This is where we begin. You know the Master Sword. Of course you do. It is the most famous blade in all of video game mythology. A weapon so iconic, so woven into the fabric of gaming culture, that even people who have never held a controller understand what it represents. Power. Destiny. The eternal struggle between good and evil. But that is only the story we tell ourselves when we are awake. When you close your eyes and sit with the sword in the quiet space between sleep and waking, a different story emerges. One that is far older and far sadder than any tale of heroic adventure. A story about the burden of being chosen, about what it costs to save a world over and over again. Let us go back. Not to the beginning, because the Master Sword has no true beginning that anyone can remember, but to a moment of pause. Imagine yourself standing at the forge in Hyrule Castle, in a time before most of the games you know. The sword lies before you on a stone anvil. It is not glowing or humming with power. It is simply a blade, perfectly balanced, perfectly crafted, and perfectly, utterly alone. The sword does not speak. Nothing about it moves. But if you could hear its thoughts, if such a thing were possible, what do you think it would say? Would it boast of the adventures it has had? Would it tell you stories of the heroes who have wielded it? Or would it say something far simpler, far quieter, far more true? I am tired. That is the whisper you would hear if you listened long enough. Not from the sword itself, but from something deeper. From the accumulated weight of every timeline, every cycle, every iteration of this eternal struggle. The Master Sword is not just a weapon, it is a record. A living chronicle of every world it has saved, and every world that needed saving, because the last one fell apart anyway. Consider for a moment what it must be like to exist across multiple timelines. In our world, we think of time as linear. We are born, we live, we die. Everything moves forward. But the Master Sword does not experience time that way. It exists in the child timeline, in the adult timeline, in the downfall timeline. It is forged and broken and repaired and broken again, and each time it remembers. This is a burden we rarely think about when we are playing the games. We pick up the sword, we feel powerful, we defeat Ganon or Ganondorf or Calamity or whatever darkness threatens the realm. The music swells, the credits roll. We put the controller down and return to our own world, sated by the victory. But the sword does not get to rest. It never rests. As soon as one hero vanquishes their enemy, somewhere in another timeline, another hero is being born. Another world is falling into shadow. Another child is standing before the blade, hand trembling, ready to take up a burden they do not fully understand. Imagine that you are the Master Sword. Feel the weight of it for a moment. Not the physical weight, though a sword is heavy, heavier than people expect, especially when you are holding it for the first time and your arm is shaking from fear, but the metaphysical weight. The existential heaviness of knowing that no matter how many times you save the world, it will fall again. In the child timeline, young Link pulls you from the pedestal, and you feel his fear and his determination. It is a good feeling, almost. Here is a child ready to grow up too quickly, ready to take on a quest that will cost him his childhood. You are sharp and eager and new. But then you remember, you have done this before. Not in this timeline, but in others. This child will succeed. He will fail. He will grow old waiting for a darkness that comes too late. Or he will be given the chance to start over, to live his life differently, to avoid the burden altogether. Except he will not. He will never be able to avoid it. Something in the very fabric of his existence draws him back to you, again and again. In the adult timeline, you are thrust into a world flooded by desperation and magic. The hero who pulled you last time won, and this is what winning looks like. A world so transformed that nothing remains as it was. And yet, even here, even in this drowning world, evil finds a way. And another hero must be born to face it. And they must find you, wherever you have been sealed away, and pull you forth once more. In the downfall timeline, you lie shattered. The hero failed, evil won, and for an age you rest in pieces, scattered across a world of darkness. But even this cannot last forever. Eventually, through some twist of fate and magic, you are remade, and another hero comes, and the cycle turns again. What strikes you when you sit with this truth is how rarely we think about the sword's perspective in all of this. We celebrate the hero. We cheer for their victory. We write fan theories about what they are thinking, what they are feeling. But the sword is always just there, present, waiting, necessary. Like the ground beneath a dancer's feet, essential, but unseen. The sword cannot choose whether it wants to be wielded. It cannot retire. It cannot decide that this world has had enough saving and that it would like to rest in peace in some museum, forever unused. The moment it is created, it becomes bound to this purpose, to this endless struggle. There is something almost tragic about that. Not in the dramatic sense that we attach to tragedies in games and stories. Not the kind that makes you cry at a funeral scene or gasp when a beloved character falls. But tragic in the deeper, quieter way. The tragedy of being perfectly suited to one task and having no choice but to perform it forever. You might think this is a sad story, and in some ways it is, but stay with it a little longer, because there is another layer to this silence, another depth to this burden. The Master Sword is never more alive than when it is doing what it was made to do. This is the strange comfort at the heart of its eternal journey. Yes, it must save worlds. Yes, it must face evil again and again without rest. Yes, it exists across multiple timelines, experiencing roughly the same struggles over and over. But in doing these things, it achieves a kind of perfect purpose. It exists in complete alignment with its nature. In our world, we spend so much time searching for purpose. We wonder what we are meant to do, who we are meant to become. We agonize over career choices and life paths, and whether we are doing enough to matter. The sword never has to ask these questions. It knows exactly what it is. It knows exactly why it exists. There is, in that certainty, a strange peace. Think about what it would be like to wake up every single day knowing with absolute clarity that what you are doing matters, that your purpose is not negotiable or uncertain, that you will be needed and that you will answer that need, and that this is good and right and true. For all the loneliness and burden that comes with being the Master Sword, there is also that. The sword never doubts itself. It never wonders if it is strong enough or good enough or worthy of the hero's hand. It simply is. It simply endures. It simply continues. There is a meditation that can be found in that kind of acceptance, in sitting with what you are and what you are meant to do, without resistance, without complaint, without endless questioning. The Master Sword teaches us this through its very silence and its very burden. When you are lying in your bed late at night, unable to sleep because your mind is circling around your own purpose and direction, you might think about the sword. You might imagine what it would feel like to be so certain. Not arrogant, not callous, but simply, perfectly certain. Rooted in knowledge of what you are meant for. The Master Sword is passed between so many hands, different heroes, different timelines, different ages, and yet it is always itself. Its essence does not change. What changes is the context, the world around it, the particular evil that needs defeating. But the sword remains constant. It remains true. It remains ready. We do not speak much about the beauty of things that persist. In our age of constant change and novelty and reinvention, there is something quietly radical about a blade that has existed for thousands of years and has never once wavered in its purpose. It does not become trendy and then outdated. It does not struggle with relevance or wonder if it is still needed. It simply continues, generation after generation, doing what it was always meant to do. In some of the later games, you see the Master Sword growing tired, actually tired. The blade becomes worn. It needs to be recharged in the presence of fairy fountains or sacred springs. There is almost a fragility to it, a vulnerability that had not been visible before. But even in this exhaustion, the sword shows up. It does not break. It does not refuse. It rests when it can and returns to its duty when needed. This is a kind of heroism that we rarely celebrate. Not the dramatic heroism of standing against impossible odds and winning through sheer force of will. But the quiet heroism of showing up, day after day, century after century, knowing that your work is never truly finished and choosing to do it anyway. The sword never complains. It never asks for thanks. It never demands recognition or tries to take credit for the hero's accomplishments. It simply lends its power to the one who holds it and trusts that they will use it wisely. And when they do not, when the hero falls or fails or chooses wrong, the sword does not judge. It simply waits for the next one. There is something almost meditative about observing this patience. In the quiet hours before dawn, when you are lying awake and your own worries feel too heavy to bear, you can think about the Master Sword and what it teaches through its existence. It teaches that burden and purpose can coexist peacefully. That an endless task is not necessarily a meaningless one. That showing up with quiet dedication, without fanfare or complaint, is its own kind of victory. The sword exists in darkness sometimes, sealed away in temples or pedestals, or the hands of fate itself. But even in that darkness, it does not lose itself. It does not grow cynical or bitter. It simply waits, existing in a state of peaceful readiness, knowing that eventually it will be called upon again. When a new hero discovers the blade, there is often a moment of awe. They stand before this magnificent weapon, this legendary artifact, and they feel the weight of history and destiny pressing down upon them. They do not yet understand that the sword feels that weight too, that it has always felt it, and that it has learned to carry it with a kind of grace. The sword teaches this grace to the hero, if the hero is willing to learn. It teaches that you can do what needs doing without bitterness. You can accept a burden without resentment. You can save a world without needing that world to thank you or remember you or build statues in your honor. This is a lonely lesson. But loneliness, properly understood, is not the same as despair. The Master Sword is lonely, yes, but it is not sad. It is lonely the way a mountain is lonely. Not isolated by rejection or failure, but standing apart simply because it is strong enough to stand alone. Because it is entirely sufficient unto itself, even as it waits to serve those who are not. In the very latest chapters of the legend, in the timelines where calamity wakes and the world falls into unprecedented darkness, you see heroes wielding the Master Sword with a new kind of desperation. They are fighting against decay and ruin on a scale never seen before. And yet the sword is there, worn, exhausted. But there, still trying, still fighting alongside them. This is what persistence looks like when all the grand narratives have fallen away. When heroism is no longer about triumphing gloriously, but about simply continuing to try in the face of overwhelming darkness. The sword shows us how to do this. How to be worthy, not through extraordinary achievement, but through ordinary, relentless dedication. You might wonder if the sword, in all its timelines and cycles, ever finds peace. Does it ever get to truly rest? The answer might be that it rests in the only way it knows how, by being exactly what it is, doing exactly what it was made for, and accepting that this is enough. As you lie here in the darkness, letting your own thoughts slow and settle, imagine that you could be like the Master Sword in some small way, not bearing the weight of worlds perhaps, but accepting your own purpose with that same quiet certainty. Not rushing or striving or demanding more of yourself than you can give, but simply showing up, simply being what you are, simply continuing. The sword does not hope for anything better. It does not dream of escape or retirement or a different life. It is simply at peace with what it is. And in that peace, in that acceptance, it finds a kind of joy, not the ecstatic joy of victory, but something deeper, something more sustaining. The joy of purpose fulfilled again and again without end. The Master Sword exists in all timelines. It is forged in some, broken in others, sealed away in still others. But wherever it is itself, unchanged, unmoved, at peace with its burden, because the burden is what it is. As you settle deeper into sleep, let the weight of that lesson settle into you as well. You do not need to be a sword. You do not need to save worlds. But you could, perhaps, accept your own journey with the same quiet grace. You could be certain of your purpose without needing constant validation. You could continue, even when the task seems endless, because continuing is what you are here to do. The sword will never know rest, not really, but it has found something better than rest. It has found peace in motion, contentment in service, and a kind of immortal strength that comes not from being undefeated, but from simply never giving up. This is the gift the Master Sword offers. Not power, though it grants that. Not victory, though it enables that. But the gift of understanding that a burden born with grace is not a burden at all. It is a purpose. And purpose, properly understood, is the closest thing to peace that any of us will ever find. So close your eyes now. Imagine the Master Sword, resting in some hidden chamber far away. Not sleeping, because swords do not sleep, but existing in that same state of eternal readiness that teaches us, from across the worlds and timelines and ages, that we can endure, that we can accept, that we can continue. And in that acceptance, we find the strange and quiet peace that has no need for words. Chew. You have journeyed with us through 4 stories now, through the silence of heroes who cannot speak, through the objects that shape fate itself, through the fractured paths of time, and finally into the meditative acceptance of a blade that carries the weight of worlds. The Legend of Zelda, at its heart, is not about heroes or quests, or even the constant battle between good and evil. It is about understanding that all of these things, the silence, the objects, the time, the burden, are simply different ways of asking one gentle question. How do we continue? How do we accept what we are? How do we find peace in purpose? These are the questions that have no easy answers, and so the legend keeps returning to them again and again across games and timelines and iterations. Not because there is a solution, but because the asking itself is what matters. The sitting with the question, the meditating on it in the quiet hours. As you drift now into the sleep that calls to you, let yourself be like the Master Sword, present, purposeful, at rest, not because you have finished your work, but because you have made peace with the fact that the work is never finished. And that is not a tragedy. That is simply what it means to be alive. Sleep well. Rest in the knowledge that you too are exactly what you are meant to be. That you too can continue. That you too can find a kind of peace in simply showing up day after day and being your own particular kind of true. The legend continues in all of us, in our own quieter ways, and that is more than enough.